How much exactly do Uber and Lyft drivers make? Engaging in rideshare, is it profitable? Well, today we have a little bit of information that I believe is valuable for anyone debating on whether it's profitable in rideshare. What up, folks? Once again, it is indeed your boy Tim with another ride sharing video. Now, Minneapolis has been in the news quite a bit lately because the drivers there are suggesting they don't get paid much, and a new ordinance was passed to increase the wages for drivers. It's been very unpopular by some, but certainly favored by drivers. But the numbers that Lyft is proposing, because Lyft is suggesting that perhaps drivers are asking for too much, and Lyft has made a counteroffer. The reason I'm bringing this up, because anyone wanting to know whether it is profitable to engage in rideshare, the proposal from Lyft that they actually put in writing, which I would refer to as saying the quiet part out loud, should make it quite obvious whether it is quite profitable or a quite desperate situation to engage in rideshare. Now, this comes from an article titled Lyft Offers Compromise to Minneapolis Ahead of Rideshare Pay Ordinance. The rideshare pay ordinance is what the city council has passed to give drivers an increase in pay. Lyft suggesting that it is too much, and by the way, Uber is saying the same thing. They're in fact threatening to leave the market of Minneapolis because they believe the ordinance is giving drivers too much. Well, Lyft has made a counteroffer. Lyft has actually typed up a letter in their own writing and said, no, what you're giving them is too much, but here is what we are willing to settle on. So let's get into this, because this explains quite well in regards to an answer of whether drivers are making a hell of a lot of money or not. Rideshare giant Lyft has sent a letter to the Minneapolis City Council suggesting a pay rate compromise for its drivers before the city's upcoming rideshare pay ordinance takes place. That ordinance takes place on May 1st, I believe in May. May 1st. Anyhow, that's when they're threatening to leave, because they're saying that once you give them this new pay setup or pay scheme, it's going to be too much for Uber and Lyft to pay the drivers, so they're going to leave the market. So it's about to take place. Here is what drivers are being offered due to this pay ordinance. Now, Lyft's going to make a counteroffer, but this is what the law is going to be. Drivers must make $1.40 per mile. 51 cents per minute. That doesn't run at the same damn time for some folks doing the numbers. The 51 cents per minute, cars sitting there waiting for a passenger to come out. Maybe you're stuck in traffic on a highway. The $1.40 per mile is when a damn car is moving, so they don't run at the same time. 80% of the fees go to the driver. Now, I talked about how important it is to discuss fees, because a company can always come up with a hidden reason to implement a fee on a passenger, and because the drivers don't know it's there, company can keep 100%. This law requires Uber and Lyft, or any rideshare company for that matter, to give drivers 80% of the fees. That's going to become very important as this conversation goes on. Last but not least, a minimum of $5 per trip. So anytime a passenger shows up to a customer gets in the car, the lowest a driver can make is $5. Keep in mind, drivers sometimes have to drive several miles to pick a passenger up. Passenger may only be going a few blocks. Minnesota has hellified winters, lots of snow, cold air. So people may not want to walk 5 or 6 blocks to the gas station to get some smokes, or, to the local convenience store to pick up some milk or something for their kids. Calling Uber, he may drive 4 or 5 miles to go pick that person up who only wants to go 6 blocks to avoid the snow. $5 minimum fare for any driver showing up. Right now, a host of markets in America, you can make less than $2 in a trip. My market, I think the lowest is around $2.20. So a $5 minimum is a significant increase for a hell of a lot of markets. So here is the response from Lyft. Remember, $1.40 a mile, 51 cents a minute. 80% of the fees go to the driver and a minimum $5 trip. That's what Lyft is saying is way too high. Uber is saying it as well. But here is the counter offer from Lyft that they sent to the city council. In its letter, Lyft officials said the company is willing to support the Minneapolis Department of Labor and Industry Studies recommended 89 cents per mile and 0.487, which is 49 cents per minute rates. Governor Walz ordered the study last year after vetoing a similar rideshare bill at state level. So what they did is they performed a study when the drivers were starting to really win sympathy in the fight for higher rates. The state did a study and came to a conclusion of what drivers actually should get paid, because everybody in the mix, including Lyft and Uber, are now willing to admit, yeah, we're paying them too damn low. But I gave you the numbers of what the law is going to be. Uber, or better yet, Lyft in this case, has countered, listen to the counter numbers. They countered the $1.40 per mile with 89 cents. That's significantly less. That's a lot less. What is that, 51 cents? If my math is correct, that's significantly less than $1.40 a mile. But it gets worse. Now, they counted the 51 cents a minute with 49 cents or 0.487. I don't think that's terrible, but it's what is not said that is probably far worse than what actually is said. Going from $1.40 to 89 cents is insulting enough. But in Lyft's letter, they didn't mention any percentage of the fees at all. Now, I've stated in previous videos, I personally believe, and many of you folks in the comments have agreed, that sharing the fees with drivers, being required by law to share a percentage of the fees with drivers, is probably one of the biggest sticking points of Uber and Lyft. For two reasons. One, right now they're not sharing any of them with a hell of a lot of drivers in most markets. They can impose a fee on a passenger, not even tell the driver it is even in existence, and they're sharing 0% of fees with drivers in many cases. Talked about this several times in many videos where you book a trip. When you come in from the airport tomorrow, I want to make sure a car is there, so I'm going to book a trip ahead of time. They've been charging the passengers a fee for reserving trips ahead of time. 0% of that has been going to drivers. So having to give 80% of fees where you haven't even been telling the drivers the fees exist, that's a huge no-no for the companies. They don't want to share that. You see in Lyft's note, Lyft's counteroffer, they don't mention the fees at all. Because fees are an easy way to make extra revenue for the companies. Nobody knows what's really going on. You know, listen, if you want to have a trip in the middle of rush hour where there's, maybe less drivers on the road, we can charge you $1 rush hour surcharge or some type of fee. The driver has no clue that's happening. They're not sharing any of that on with the drivers. There's always an excuse for making a fee. You want a trip at 3 o'clock in the morning? Once again, shortage of drivers, wee hours of the morning fee, or whatever the hell they want to call it. Having to give drivers 80% of the fees not only makes it so they got to actually make a fair representation of what they're paying, but they actually have to be transparent. Right now, they're not being transparent. Nobody knows about the fees in terms of drivers, and the passengers most of the time think that whatever they pay, the drivers are getting a percentage of it. Transparency explains all of that. So notice, no fee mentioned at all. Last but not least, $5 minimum trip is what the ordinance is coming up with. They didn't mention a minimum fare at all, which would lead one to conclude that these minimum fares of $2-3, they want to keep it that way. They want to keep the 0% of the fees. It's not even mentioned in their counteroffer. Their counteroffer is, it really sucks. It really sucks. It's something you will respond with a polite fuck you, a middle finger. But continuing on, listen to this, because for folks who want to know what Lyft gets paid or what drivers get paid, Lyft said the compromise will increase driver pay while allowing its services to remain affordable for rides. Lyft claims the upcoming Minneapolis ordinance would have the opposite of its intended effect, claiming it would lead to a 51% decrease in ride requests, resulting in lost wages for drivers. If you ever wonder if rideshare drivers make a hell of a lot of money, I think Lyft's actual letter should give you all of the information you need. They're countering with 89 cents per mile, and that is an increase for what drivers are currently earning in that market. I'm not in the Minneapolis market. I don't know what drivers are currently making or earning, but they're offering 89 cents per mile, and that is an increase. That is more than what they're making now. The IRS, if you drive for a living, when it's time to file taxes, according to the IRS, at least, I believe it's 63 cents per mile is what they credit you in expenses. The IRS, of all people, is suggesting that every mile you drive, there's about 60 some odd cents in incurred expenses. Some drivers can certainly drive for less than 63 cents per mile in expenses. Others cannot, depending on what kind of vehicle you have. Nevertheless, if you're spending 63 cents per mile in expenses and they're offering you 89 cents, according to the IRS, you're making 26 cents per mile in profit. That is going with the actual government number. So if you're wondering if Uber and Lyft drivers make a hell of a good income, 26 cents per mile, and that is an increase over what they are currently making, according to Lyft themselves. This is not some driver giving you bullshit or some analyst. This is Lyft themselves saying that if we give drivers in Minneapolis, a very high cost of living market, if we give drivers 89 cents per mile, it will be an increase over what we're paying them now. What the hell are they making right now? That just shows you how low the drivers are actually earning. No speculation at all. That is Lyft's number. So anyone that does not believe those drivers in that market have a reason to actually push for a wage increase, with Lyft admitting that, if you believe drivers are making a hellified amount of money because somebody on TikTok or YouTube or some other social media page has told you otherwise, when Lyft is saying that out in the open, go to hell. It's your boy Tim. Subscribe to the damn channel. Tap the screen. See you in the next video.